Hi. So recently I did a video called Downplaying Disasters, and it was about a few documentaries that I'd seen, and I started noticing this pattern of behavior. Whenever there's a preventable tragedy, a man-made disaster, usually what causes it is a combination of greed and negligence. Well, now I've seen a couple more documentaries and I'm seeing the same pattern with this. I'm going to try not to make this too long. I mean, last time I was trying to talk about 4 different documentaries that were very different. So this time there's only 2 and they're both on a common theme, which is the opioid crisis. Once again, I still see parallels to what's happening now with the pandemic. So the 2 documentaries I'm going to be discussing today are Warning This Drug May Kill You from 2017 and All the Beauty and the Bloodshed from 2023. So, Warning This Drug May Kill You opens with a series of clips which are disturbing. They're addicts that are passing out. It's like they're in this slow motion, lean forward, kneeling. One's on a bus, I think, and anyway, they're all just, they're out of it. The most disturbing of all, of course, is the mom who's passed out in a grocery store, just laying on the floor, and her toddler tugging at her and screaming, "Mama." It's too horrible for words. So it tells the story of a few different families, and what it shows is that when you picture an addict, you might picture a heroin addict lying in the gutter with like a needle in their arm. You're not thinking of a suburban mom or, a teenage girl or a guy, in a happy family. These are the people that can become addicts. And it's the fault of a very wealthy family who cared more about money than lives. The Sackler family. They own Purdue Pharma. They're the makers of Oxycontin, which is an extremely potent and very addictive pain medication. So in this first documentary, you meet Stephanie Gay, who's a young girl, and she had kidney stones. So she was prescribed Oxycontin and became addicted to it. And what happens is, at first they're given the pills by their doctor, and then they can't get enough. So they want more and more. They start crushing it and snorting it. Then it progresses to using heroin and intravenous. But these people are made addicts. It's a preventable tragedy, and they are causing it on purpose. They are causing it to make profit. In the 1990s, Purdue Pharma started this very aggressive marketing campaign where they wanted doctors to prescribe Oxycontin, give it to everyone. It's safe. Only 1% of people become addicts. Well, if you consider the tens of millions of people that are using it, if 1% of them become addicts, that's still a lot of people. So what would happen is someone has an injury or they have surgery and they're given this pain medication, which is so extremely addictive. You can be addicted within a week. And basically their lives are ruined. And these are people that had happy, maybe perfect lives before, and now they're ruined by this family and this Purdue Pharma. And it's just sheer greed and reckless negligence and apathy that creates this. More people die from opioid overdoses than die from car accidents or gun homicides. And we know how many accidents and homicides there are because they happen every day in America. So it's not bad enough that there are manufacturers of guns who know they kill people and they still keep making them. And there was just another school shooting the other day. Cigarette companies They know that smoking causes cancer, but at least they put the warning on the box. But they still sell it, they still market it, and people still buy it. Alcohol, I don't even want to get into that because I knew someone who was an alcoholic and it ruined his life and inevitably ended his life. He died of an overdose of alcohol. And with drugs, the same thing. I mean, it's bad enough, yeah, drug dealers, you already know, lowlives, they don't care if their clients die or what happens to them. But these are prescription medications. There are doctors prescribing them to their patients and not warning them about the risks and not, using maybe safer alternatives. No, they are giving this to, a 16-year-old that comes in for a surgery or kidney stone, and next thing you know, they're addicts. Apparently, since 1999, opioid deaths quadrupled. The sad thing is, people trust their doctor. They figure, well, your doctor's not going to harm you, right? But what if the doctors are bribed by these pharmaceutical companies or influenced to push these medications? Oh, here, you can prescribe this for pain. Sure, it's not addictive, it's safe. So Stephanie, the first person you meet in this video, she's the first addict that they show her story. So she had kidney stones at 16 years old. She was prescribed pain medications, Vicodin and Oxycontin. And what she found was, not only because opioids, it's a pain blocker. It doesn't treat the underlying cause, but it blocks the pain. But it did more than that. It made her feel okay about everything. It made it easier to not worry or care about anything. So she got addicted to that feeling. And sadly, she even let her sister try it, and her sister got addicted. Her sister ends up dying from an overdose. She goes for treatment, but she has relapses. She goes to a program. The police had a program, The Way Out. So you go into the police and you say, I'm looking for a way out. And they check your bag, make sure you have nothing, no drugs on you, and send you to a treatment center. But she left. She ran away. So it's so tragic because these people, they started off with this normal, perfect life, and then they take these painkillers, just for surgery or injury, whatever, and next thing you know, they're addicted, and it's destroyed their life. The next story is Wynn Doyle, and sadly, she ends up dying from an overdose. But she has kids, and when she's not using drugs, she's a great mom and she's very loving. But when she's using, she becomes like this Jekyll and Hyde, like she's not herself. And at one point, her son showed a text message that she'd sent him and when she was high, and it made no sense. She's just completely out of it. But what happened with her, I guess she was given medications after pregnancy, so she was given pain medications. She got addicted to them, and she would even go so far, when they wouldn't give her any more, she would deliberately injure herself to get more pills. She slammed her hand in a car door. She'd be bandaged up and she'd get more pills. And then they sent her to 11 different rehabs, trying to get her help, and each time you'd think, she's back on her feet, she's going to be okay, and then she'd relapse again. And then what ended up happening, she had kidney stones. She goes to the hospital, and the hospital that knew her history and that she was an opioid addict, and they gave her pain meds. So she winds up overdose, and just tragic. Every story, so tragic and so preventable. And then there was a young guy, Brendan Cole, again, happy suburban family. He has a brother, loving parents, normal life, but he had a surgery to remove a cyst. He was prescribed Oxycontin and became addicted, and they tried to get him help. At one point he had an overdose, but they had Narcan, and they were able to reverse it. And they're like, that was a close call. This is a wake-up call. And the problem is with Narcan, so it cancels out the narcotic. So the person will go through withdrawal because now they're not feeling the effects of that drug anymore. Well, he was in his room, and they didn't know he'd stashed some heroin, baggies of heroin in a stuffed bear, and they didn't know about. Anyway, he ends up dying of an overdose. It's just heartbreaking that it was all preventable. And these were all people that, through no fault of their own, They were in pain, they went to their doctor, and they were given a prescription. I think it's diabolical that, you know, first of all, that a company would market a drug that's this dangerous and not warn the risk, that a doctor would prescribe it so readily and not warn of the risks. It shouldn't happen. And then the last family, the Casey family, Georgia Casey. She's a 26-year-old, very bubbly, happy girl, but she's prescribed painkillers after she hurts her back and her hip, and she becomes an addict and she dies of an overdose. So it's terrible. And it's like there's this stigma or shame around being an addict, and because people have this misconception that, you know, it's just somebody in an alley. This could happen to anyone. Opioids can be effective for very short-term use or end-of-life care, but they should not be used for chronic pain. They should not be overprescribed, and there have to be warnings about how addictive this is. And to me, any alternative would be better than that. After the documentary, new government guidelines warn doctors that opioids are not safe for long-term use. All the Beauty and the Bloodshed is a documentary from 2023. It's about Nan Golden, and it isn't just about opioid addiction and Oxycontin and the Sackler family, although it is largely about that. It is also like an autobiography of Nan Golden's life, how she grew up, her family, her sister's tragic story, her art, her photography, and her friends in her community and her activism. So very powerful and compelling film. Nan Golden is an addiction survivor herself. As in the other documentary, she is prescribed Oxycontin after surgery and she becomes addicted. Like, it starts off, she's prescribed 3 pills a day and she winds up eventually taking 18 pills a day. She said she was addicted overnight. It was that powerful. So problem is, the more you take a drug, the more it loses its effect, and you need more and more to have the same effect. So eventually she was crushing them and snorting them, and that became her life. It just revolved around drugs and crushing them and snorting them. So sadly, Nan's sister, who lived a very troubled life because of their parents. Their parents probably shouldn't have been parents. It sounds like they had kids just because it was the thing to do. And they worried more about what the neighbors would think than their children's own mental health. Her sister, they sent away to an orphanage. Imagine sending your own child to an orphanage when you're alive, because they couldn't deal with her. And it was actually the mom who had a lot of problems from her childhood and didn't know how to deal with her daughter once she hit adolescence. So they just sent her away. So the daughter never felt loved. And felt neglected by her parents. She winds up committing suicide. It's terrible. Nan, thankfully, I mean, she carries a lot of this hurt from being neglected and having parents that are just sort of clueless and cold and ambivalent. But she had an outlet. She had photography. And she said at one point, her mom was always saying, you know, don't let the neighbors know, don't let the neighbors know. Everything had to be secret, and you had to pretend that things were fine, and her mom would deny things that had happened. Oh no, that you didn't see that, you didn't hear that, that didn't happen. So Nan turned to photography as a way to like record the moment, because a photo is permanent. You know, this is proof that this happened. It's like, I was here, this is my life. And her photos are very powerful and very raw and real. And they're just, you know, moments frozen in time and images of people she knows and loves in her family and friends, and just the gritty, raw reality of life. So the film shows both her life and her activism and taking down the Sackler family, because obviously she takes it personally that this happened to her as well, that she became an addict because of Oxycontin. So Nan creates this group of activists called PAIN, Prescription Addiction Intervention Now. And they engage in a series of protests at museums and galleries where the Sackler name is featured, and basically asking that the museums take down the Sackler name because they are guilty. It's the money that they're giving these galleries is basically blood money. The Sacklers profited off of people's pain and suffering. They deliberately created drug addicts for profit. They knew how addictive the drugs were. They still encouraged doctors to prescribe them to as many patients as possible. So Nan, as an activist, her voice might have meant even more because she was an artist that was featured in these galleries. She was a very respected photographer, and she was in some of their permanent collections. So here she's saying, you know, take down the Sackler name. And they did have an impact. It took years, but a number of the galleries did stop taking donations from the Sacklers because it's like, no, you can keep your blood money. And eventually the Louvre was the first museum that took down the Sackler name, and the others followed. The Met, Guggenheim, a whole bunch of galleries. So that was a win, but it took time to do it. And they did a number of really powerful protests where they'd made up these pill bottles. I'll show you. And they had these flyers and prescriptions. So at the launch party for Oxycontin, a member of the Sackler family bragged that the event would be followed by a blizzard of prescriptions that would bury the competition, and it would be so deep and white, this pile of prescriptions. Well, they not only buried the competition, they buried the users. Oxycontin is one of the deadliest drugs of all time. It kills 200 people a day in the US. At the time that Nan was doing these protests and die-ins, 400,000 had died. The number is now more than 800,000. It might be 1 million, up to 1 million now, for all I know. One of the things that was so tragic about the film, and sort of a parallel between Nan's life and her family and the Sackler family, is that you feel like, who can you trust? If you can't trust your own parents, if even they are negligent and indifferent and more concerned with conformity and keeping up appearances and denial and lies, they drove their daughters away. I mean, their one daughter, Barbara, they literally sent her away to an orphanage and mental hospital and wherever. She winds up committing suicide. She runs away. She lays on the train tracks, and apparently she had left her purse by the tracks, and in it she had a quote from Joseph Conrad's The Heart of Darkness. A very bleak quote about life. Droll thing life is, that mysterious arrangement of merciless logic for a futile purpose. Most you can hope for is some knowledge of yourself that comes too late, a crop of inextinguishable regrets. So at one point in the film, her mom reads this card. The mom and dad, they're creepy to me. Like they seem like puppets, just hollow inside. But at one point they show the hearing for the bankruptcy trial because, okay, so here's what happens to Purdue Pharma. They declare bankruptcy because they can't deal with, you know, the thousands of lawsuits being brought against them. So why not declare bankruptcy, even though the Sackler family had siphoned out $10 billion before that. But anyway, at one point they have a hearing, a video conference hearing, and you see a couple of members of the family. I think it was David and Teresa Sackler, and they're creepy as hell. Like, just no expression, no emotion, like they don't even care. And Nan and other members of Pain wanted them to at least see and hear from some of the victims of the crisis that they created. But it seems like it has no effect on them whatsoever. Like they don't feel anything, they don't care. Because even though Purdue Pharma was found negligent and guilty, it's owned by the Sacklers, and they still have their money, and they're still comfortable, and they're fine, and they don't care that all these people died. I mean, they weren't trying to make amends. All they're worried about is bad PR. All they want to do is the bare minimum just to get out of, just to weasel out of it. Victims in the Pain group had a pro bono lawyer, Mike Quinn, who was a member of Pain as well. The Sacklers spent about $30 million a month on legal fees with a team of 80 lawyers. And eventually they agreed to pay $6 billion in exchange for immunity for their family, their heirs, and associates. So basically, they got away with murder. No criminal charges. Just the bankruptcy of Purdue Pharma and paying damages. So basically, money talks. I mean, if you're rich enough, you can get away with murder, and you can manipulate the justice system, and you just get away with it. It's horrible to think how unethical and cruel people can be. But I guess billionaires, that's how they made their money, because they value money more than human lives, so they don't care. The scary thing is, billionaires seem to control everything else, because you have billionaires up here controlling corporations. Then you have government who cater to corporate interests, so basically kissing the billionaires behinds to, you know, stay in their good favor. So you have the billionaires controlling the government. Government makes policies, which are followed by public health. So public health follows the government, who follows the billionaires, who only care about money. Public health tells the doctors what to do. So the doctors follow public health, who follows the government, who follows the billionaires, who don't care about lives. And the media just reports what they hear from the doctors and the government and the billionaires, and half the media outlets are owned by the billionaires. So guess what narrative they're telling? So it's so frustrating, infuriating to me. Like, this never should have happened. You shouldn't be making drug addicts with a prescription medication. People should be warned of the risks. They should know how addictive it is. They should be given alternatives. When I think about it, I mean, it could have happened to me. I went to the hospital for surgery years ago in 2017. And I was given a very strong painkiller. I remember the nurse asking me about my pain tolerance, and I kind of joked, like, my pain tolerance is 0. Like, I don't know how I survived childbirth. I had the epidural. Before that, I fainted at a needle. Like, yeah, I'm not a fan of pain. They prescribed me hydromorphone, which apparently is as strong as oxycodone. Oxycodone is the ingredient in Oxycontin. Very strong narcotic opiate. So I remember when I was taking it that like I wanted to be really careful not to be addicted to it. And even my mom kind of joked, like she was worried I was going to be an opioid addict. I'm like, I would not let that happen. So I think it's said to take them once every 4 hours. So I kept extending the intervals. So then next time I would take it after 5 hours, and then 6 and 7 and 8. I didn't even finish the bottle. Like I did not want to be addicted to them. When I was in high school in my art class, I remember a guy said to me, "Oh, you'd make a good addict." And I'm like, that was a horrible thing to say. I can't remember the context, what we were talking about, or why he said that out of the blue. But I mean, in a way, I knew what he meant because I'm a very intense person. I'm a very emotional person. And when I like something, I'm all in. Like whether it's a food or a band that I like or whatever, I love it like too much. So, you know, for sure, if maybe I'd tried something, I would have gotten, I don't know. But I never smoked, drank, or did drugs. Drugs I wouldn't even try. Like I tried a cigarette once, it was horrible. Alcohol, never liked the taste, didn't like how it made me feel. So yeah, I never did the cool things to fit in. It's like, no thank you. And drugs, I would not try. Like not even pot, because like, no, don't want anything messing up with my brain, no thank you. Because I'm a control freak, like I want to be in control. And I had heard nightmare stories, even about pot. Like you can still be paranoid and have a bad trip. So I for sure wouldn't have been trying any hardcore drugs because I've heard nightmare stories about them too. But no, even this like prescription drug, did not trust it. And I mean, there have been times I basically don't trust prescription drugs, period, if I'm being honest, because there have been times I've been prescribed something for whatever. And when I read the side effects, like sometimes the prenote is 4 pages long. And by the time I read all the side effects, I'm like, I'm not taking it. Like sometimes the cure is worse than the disease. I'm sorry to say, but I don't trust it. I've known people in the past that have been on antidepressants and anti-anxiety, and I'm like, no, thank you. That is just a mess. Because now don't get me wrong, there might be some medications that work for some people, but a lot of it's a crapshoot and they really don't know. And every single drug has side effects. Have you seen any of these commercials for drugs? It's like they show smiling, happy people and then they'll say, may cause internal bleeding, sudden blindness, death. Like, who would take this knowing that? Like, I know one person that I knew, and he was taking a medication for his skin, and it's, when I read the side effects, like it can damage your liver. He was already an alcoholic. It's like you're already damaging your liver. What are you thinking? You're taking this for acne? Really? To me, I think doctors are too willing to prescribe medications for anything and everything. When I was diagnosed with PTSD and anxiety, I at first didn't know the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist. Well, the difference I soon learned was that a psychiatrist is a medical doctor and can prescribe medications. Unfortunately, sometimes that's all they do. All they want to do, they're pill pushers. They want to give you something. And I remember seeing this very condescending psychiatrist at one point, and he wanted to put me on anti-anxiety meds. I'm like, I don't trust it. I don't trust medications. He goes, oh, and some people think you're this flat. I'm like, no, I know that there are side effects and it's addictive and I'm not interested in that. So I saw a psychologist for years, and she helped me to deal with my intrusive thoughts and help me with coping strategies. But in the end, you know, after years, she was even trying to push me into taking medications, and I was completely against it. And finally I thought, okay, I'll ask my doctor about it. So I said, point blank, is there an anti-anxiety medication that is fast acting, does not have side effects and is not addictive. She laughed. She laughed out loud. And she said, no, everyone would be taking that if like it doesn't exist. Of course, an anti-anxiety medication is going to have side effects and it's going to be addictive. My mom once, she had surgery and she needed an anti-anxiety to calm her down. She said when she tried to go off them, she was almost literally climbing the walls. I did wind up taking an anti-anxiety, I think it was Ativan at one point, for hives of all things, because I broke out in hives from anxiety. But anyway, that's another story. But I took it to help me sleep. I was so drowsy, like there's no way that I could take that every day. Like I'd be passing out, I'd be so tired. So it's like, no. And Oxycontin is obviously that much worse. Now, if someone's in pain, obviously you don't want them to be in pain, but there must be something better that is not so addictive and dangerous. And people certainly should have been warned. Now, I think some people might not even read the side effects if they're given a printout. I read everything. Like, to me, you have to be so careful. Read everything. Inform yourself. Educate yourself and advocate for yourself. And don't blindly trust anyone. Frankly, you can't trust the government, public health right now. Even your doctor, I mean, if your doctor is giving you something that's dangerous, I mean, just don't assume, oh, well, they wouldn't cause me harm, because you just don't know. And right now, with the pandemic, I feel like everyone is being negligent. From government to public health, doctors, everyone's anti-mask now. It used to be only the right-wingers because they're anti-science and, oh, they said COVID was mild and it's a cold and don't worry and blah, 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 and they're anti-vax and anti-mask. But at least the left were more sensible. They listened to science and evidence and they masked. Well, now even the left has drifted to the right and now everyone's anti-mask. Everyone wants to let it rip. And they're ignoring the overwhelming evidence of the damage that SARS-2 does. Organ damage, immune dysregulation, long COVID, brain damage. It increases the risk of all-cause mortality, more cancer, more diabetes, and you're seeing more, there are more accidents, more erratic behavior, violence, and it can all be traced back to a population that has been mass infected with a brain-invading, organ-invading virus. And everyone's just acting like it's not happening. Like, to me, it's like everyone on earth right now is writing a prescription for mass disabling. And then you think, you know, like the conspiracy theorists, and they want to blame everything on vaccines, like, oh, the vaccines, it's the vaccines that's causing myocarditis, even though COVID itself causes inflammation and organ damage. But no, they ignore all that. And God forbid, they won't wear a mask. It's so infuriating because COVID is causing all this, but no one wants to admit it. And you think, well, who is benefiting from the entire population being disabled? Well, guess who? Big Pharma. Guess who's going to make a fortune if half the population is disabled, in chronic pain, diseased? All the drug companies, people like the Sacklers, people that will sit and profit off people dying, and they don't care. And what's so infuriating is these conspiracy theorists say, oh, I don't trust the government and I just want my freedom, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, okay, don't trust the government. Don't trust Big Pharma, but look what they're doing. Because you calling me a sheep for wearing a mask, if I'm the only one wearing a mask, first of all, I'm a lone wolf, not a sheep. You're the sheep that's being led off to the slaughter and you don't even realize it. They let you think it's your own idea to let it rip. It's mass disabling, and people think, oh, it's mild, and I've had it a few times, I'm just fine. You don't even see the damage it's doing. COVID's only 3 years old. You know, look at the damage that AIDS did. Sometimes it takes 10 years to kill you, because you don't see the damage that's being done behind the scenes. And people don't die from AIDS. They die from pneumocystis, pneumonia. They die from the fact that their immune system is now damaged, and they can't fight things off. So they're vulnerable to all the opportunistic infections. Well, look what's happening with COVID. It's the same sort of thing. It's like airborne HIV, but no one wants to admit it. It is damaging your immune system. And now that's why you're seeing all these bizarre strep A and people dying from these rare fungal infections. it's all because of COVID, because they're immune compromised. Like people, all the ableists, they didn't care about the immune compromised. Well, now they're one of them. Because once you've had COVID, that is a pre-existing condition. You're now compromised, but no one wants to admit it, and they're all pretending it's not happening. So I had to vent about all this because I watch these documentaries and I get so angry. My mom's like, "Oh, why are you going to talk about that? You're not a drug addict." It's like, I get fired up because I care. I don't want to see people hurt. I don't want to see people disabled and dead. And what infuriates me is that people get away with it. That the criminals that are responsible for this are getting away with murder. And it's not okay. And now it's like everyone's in on it with the pandemic because it's not even a drug that they're taking. It's just denying reality. It's normalcy bias. They're going out and pretending there's no pandemic and they're unmasked and everyone's in danger. And there's more and more commercials for Pfizer, you know, if it's COVID, Paxlovid, Pfizer's gonna make a killing, you know, on all their drugs, which may not even work because you can rebound on Paxlovid and it's not a guarantee and there's no cure for SARS and the vaccines are less and less effective. So, but what can you do? Because you can try to warn people and they don't listen. It's like the myth of Cassandra trying to warn, you know, she has the prophecy, she knows that you're in danger, but no one will listen and they'll go ahead anyway. But sometimes I'll have a troll that will attack me. Like there was one called Antiwoke. First of all, how can you be against being woke when woke is being awake and aware and attentive to social injustice and oppression? Like how are you against that unless you're a complete idiot, sociopath? But anyway, I'll have them attack me for wearing a mask and being cautious. Like, I'm not hurting anyone. I'm trying to save myself and my daughter. I'm trying to, you know, save other people, but you can't save people from themselves. I learned that the hard way, dating an alcoholic on and off for 3 years. But I get fired up because I care. And that doesn't make me a bad person. It just makes me one of an ever shrinking minority of human beings that still care and are trying to get the word out, because it's not okay. I don't think the opioid crisis is okay. I don't think letting it rip with a pandemic that damages organs and immune systems is okay. Any more than I think that cigarettes and alcohol and selling guns, all of that I think is pretty horrible too. But where's the ethics? When now even doctors are dropping masks. Even hospitals, people are getting hospital-acquired infections. You know how messed up that is, that you're not even safe in the hospital? You can go in the hospital with cancer and get COVID, and now your cancer's worse. And then if you die, it's not even counted as a COVID death. Not to mention that the life expectancy has plummeted in just about every country, especially the US, where kids are being killed in the schools with guns and they won't even take away the guns. So as if they're going to care about a pandemic, and Biden's declaring it over and they're stopping testing and reporting, and it's so yeah. Anyway, I had to vent about all this because it drives me crazy that I feel like the kind of neglect and apathy and cruelty that you saw from a billionaire family who was willing to kill people to make a profit is the same sort of inhuman apathy and cruelty that I see from almost all of society now. And I mean, some of them are puppet masters and are doing this on purpose because they're making money from it, and some people are just clueless, just willfully ignorant. They don't know anything. They're just la-di-da, oh yeah, everything's fine. Oh, I've had COVID a few times and I'm fine. And everyone's just going along with it. And it's like boiling frogs. It's like the metaphor of boiling frogs, because if you raise the temperature gradually, they don't even notice and they don't know, oh, this is fine. Like the this is fine meme. It's not fine. But by the time they figure it out, it's too late. And I mean, frankly, some of these trolls that are anti-mask and anti-science, they won't even notice brain damage if it happens to them because they're not very bright to start with. I mean, but what can you do? All I can do is scream into the void and hope that someone by some miracle will listen, and that some of these minimizers and people not worrying about code, that they realize that, you know, they're the sheep. They're being fooled, and they are manipulated and gaslit into thinking it's their own idea to let it rip. Freedom. So anyway, that's my rant. But I love these documentaries, even though they do make me angry because when I see these things, I want to scream because it should not be happening. Money is the root of all evil. Greed kills. Like how many people have to die before they care? But they still sell cigarettes, knowing that it causes cancer. They still sell guns, even though children are being killed in schools. So I guess why are they going to stop letting it rip with a virus that causes brain damage, organ damage, immune dysregulation, sudden deaths, heart attacks, strokes, increases your risk of cancer. COVID is now the third leading cause of death around the world. In some countries, it's actually number one. COVID is the third leading cause of death after heart disease and cancer. And COVID actually makes the other two worse. COVID can cause heart disease and cancer. And those deaths won't even be counted as COVID deaths. So it's hiding in the excess deaths, which are through the roof. I don't know what to say. Everyone's just pretending it's not happening. It's happening. Someone compared it to smoking. They said it's like, now that the entire population has been infected with COVID, it's like everyone took up smoking all at once. So you're going to see a lot more cancer. You're going to see a lot more disease. And it's terrible. Or it's like everyone became a drug addict at once, you know? Everyone's writing that prescription. Oh yeah, go out and breathe a level 3 biohazard. I'm sure you'll be fine. Like everyone is anti-mask, everyone's running amok and getting COVID and no one's worrying, and it's diabolical, especially doctors. If doctors aren't even protecting people, they take an oath, do no harm. We should be focused on harm reduction, on stopping transmission, on avoiding infection. You know, it's an unmitigated disaster, literally, no mitigations. They're doing nothing now. And it's only going to get worse. The virus continues to mutate and evolve. People have stopped, but the virus has not. You can ignore it, but it's only going to get worse. Bottom line to me is stop letting billionaires kill people for profit. How about that? And how about we take accountability? And how about you warn people of risks instead of letting them die? And how about you keep people safe? How about that? To me, it's always better to be cautious. It's better to be safe than sorry. No one dies from an abundance of caution. Do no harm. Anyway, that's my rant. Take care. Stay safe. Thanks for watching.